Welcome to Coffee with Joe for Tuesday, June 28th, 2011. Joe, good to see you again. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it has, Pete. Thanks.
Joe, I'd
Salute.
like to draw our viewers' attention to an article that appeared last Friday on the website Naked Capitalism by Edward Harrison. It's called What Can the Fed Do? And it has a little video in there of Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke's testimony
Right.
before Congress last week. And it's a very interesting little heading underneath that video. Monetary policy's impotence is the
Right.
term that we used in a Coffee with Joe a few weeks ago, basically making the point that Bernanke's out of tools. The Fed is out
Right.
of tools.
Exactly, Pete. Exactly.
Now,
so.
Bernanke in that talk is admitting that the economy is not recovering as he had predicted it would be only as recently as last April. We do believe that growth is going to pick up going into 2012, but at a somewhat slower pace than we had anticipated in April. This quoting Bernanke here. We don't have a
Yep.
precise read on why this slower pace of growth is persisting. Some of the headwinds that have been concerning us, like weakness in the financial sector, problems in the housing sector, balance sheets, and deleveraging issues, may be stronger and more persistent than we thought. Another person who is quoted in Ed Harrison's article here on Naked Capitalism is economist Richard Koo, who is a former Fed research economist. So it seems like he knows something about what he's talking about. And
Yeah.
he
Oh, yeah.
has introduced this concept of a balance sheet recession into the conversation about the economy and the financial crisis. He claims that we're undergoing a balance sheet recession right now. And Harrison ends up concluding the article with this line: "For my part, I'm with Richard Koo. Monetary policy reflation will not work in a balance sheet recession when fiscal policy is contractory." First of all, would you just give our viewers a sense of what a balance sheet recession is, and then an overview of what tools Bernanke has to deal with the problems of a balance sheet recession?
The balance sheet recession is a recession that's driven by the reality, the very reality of debt money reaching its ultimate, okay? That is to say, there's too much debt in the economy. We cannot afford to repay all the debt that's in the economy. It manifests itself in the personal and business balance sheet, Pete. The more of the stuff that's out there, like when Bernanke says, well, we're not going to grow as fast as we said, and that the problems are creating more headwinds. In the balance sheet recession, heading for the depression, all that stuff is pro-cyclical on the down way. Okay, so in other words, it's all going to be driving itself. So the balance sheet recession is just going to get worse and worse until they're able to turn it around somehow. And how would that be? An improvement in the balance sheet, an improvement in the income, an improvement in the ability of people to manage their debts. Okay, now. Wait, you can't do that, Pete. You did a long, long time ago. You did a thing that says, well, when the problem is debt, you can't just put more debt on in order to solve the debt problem. You can't just keep digging the hole. And see, that's what I keep thinking, that maybe Bernanke's actually getting it a little bit. Because his solution. Now let's start to talk about solutions. The Koo's solution, Ed Harrison's solution, is to say that only the government can step in and do anything about it, because the private sector, we are the private sector, Pete, in case we don't realize it. We are the private sector. Our balance sheets, businesses' balance sheets, are out of whack and unpayable. So we need to do something. So only the government, which has the ability to spend, okay, and do anything about it. But we have this major political battle going on in this country right now, Pete, among a broad spectrum of actors who don't really understand the money system, who don't really understand the economy the way Richard Koo understands it, to say that, well, if we have a balance sheet recession, then we must have government action in order to stimulate and grow the demand in the economy. Okay? Now, both we and the modern monetary theory people say that the government can spend without issuing debt. Okay, that's a fact. Okay, and it's only because we have, installed any kind of constraints on us that we're prevented from doing so, Pete. Okay, the government's budgeting constraint, says it has to either borrow or tax, essentially. Okay, and then we get into the reality of the political fight today, which is about the debt limit, Pete. Okay, the level of our national debt. Unfortunately, we can't even talk about the level of the national debt without talking about the construct of the Peterson Group, et cetera, about the future, where the debt's going in the future. And they try to create this image of, Social Security and Medicare and everything, saying that we can't afford to do anything, so we have to deal with the debt now. Well, the best thing that we could do with the debt is to eliminate it, Pete, okay? And that's why the bill that Congressman Dennis Kucinich put in, Pete, contains the ability to have fiscal policy actions directly creating money without creating debt, and B, the elimination of government debt, Pete, the elimination of government debt. That basically to say when the government debt comes due, we're going to pay it off. We're going to pay it off with real money, and we're going to over the period of time to eliminate government debt. So, in other words, we have the solution to all these problems that are out there that is available to us in the form of the Kucinich bill, and yet we're dealing with the balance sheet recession as if there were no solutions out there. So it's a huge gap between the potential reality of our economy and that which is constrained by all these false constructs that have been put together by, really, Pete, to be honest with you, a throwback to the gold standard with regard to how the government acts in terms of protecting the currency. But that's maybe too much to get into. But that's what it is, Pete.
We say that Bernanke's toolbox is empty right now. Nobody ever talks about this, but couldn't Bernanke just announce tomorrow morning that he's forgiving all of the Treasury debt that the Fed owns? He created money out of thin air to buy that debt, okay?
Yeah, he did.
And it went out into the economy. It's out there in the economy. It actually didn't really go into the economy. It went out of the Fed, and it went to the banks that own the Fed. But it went out the door. It's only really a problem when we try to figure out how do we pay it back.
It probably is something that they could do, but it's not really something that they should do, okay? And for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Fed's a private entity, okay? And although the government has given them the power to run the national economy, those actions shouldn't happen until the Fed is brought under the Treasury, okay? But they could do it, Pete. Yeah, because why? Basically, the Fed has all the monetary power in the world. That's what it has. When it says, and under exigent circumstances, it can do anything. It can buy, junk bonds. Obviously, it can do pretty much anything. But in order to forgive the debt, who wants to be in a position to say to forgive the government debt? We want to be in a position to pay off the government debt using rational, monetary activities that have some soundness to them. And to me, that would be the difference. First of all, we couldn't pay off the government debt without doing it in an orderly way, Pete, for the simple reason that in fractional reserve banking, government debt serves as the reserves of the banks.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden you didn't have the reserves of the banks, but you still had fractional reserve banking, to tell you the truth, Pete, that's what would happen would be kind of like a massive contraction of the money. But in principle, Pete, to your question, I would say yes, we could, okay? But we would want to do it really through the way that Kucinich, has set it up, is to just pay it off when it matures. Just pay it off when it matures, because there's a mechanism there that's set up by which the government, obtains the money with which to pay it off. So Pete, we're back to this thing about Pete. It's the debt money system that's broken. The debt money system being broken is, in the words of Richard Koo, a balance sheet recession. And the only way to fix it is by replacing the debt money system in fractional reserve banking with debt-free money, as Congressman Kucinich calls for.
Where is Congressman Kucinich in the conversation right now about the debt ceiling. It's all over the news, all over the place, and it seems like this is the time when he should be standing up, holding his bill, saying this is what we need. The debt money system is broken, what you just said. He's not doing it.
With all the credit that I have to give to Congressman Kucinich, because we haven't had a monetary reform bill like this since 1934. I do think that we're at a critical juncture in our history, and that he should be actually bringing it out there with much more fanfare than he has been.
Well, I guess being a politician, thinking about mounting a presidential campaign, I mean, maybe he's figuring that the best way to get this bill passed is to use it as part of a presidential election, and then he can sign the bill when it comes across his table if he's the president someday. But it would be nice to have somebody else. I mean, seems like the perfect time to be talking about this right now.
I agree, Pete, totally. Ever upward.
Let's do it again soon.
Okay, Pete.
See you, man.
Thanks, man.